Microsoft announced a few months ago that they would be releasing a new Xbox system this year. It just wasn't necessarily one that people were expecting, although it is technically a solve to a problem people were bringing up with the Xbox Series S. Not necessarily the power differential between the S and the X. That is very much intentional by Microsoft to come in at a lower price point. This has to do with the storage for the Xbox Series S. In fact, doubling it with the new matte black Xbox system. And they asked if I wanted to take a look at it, and I asked again. You remember what I did with the Xbox Series X when you sent that out, it came apart completely. But no, they did send one out, so a big shout out to Microsoft for providing the system in this video. However, they haven't seen this video in terms of my opinions or any of that. All of that is very much my own. So today, we're going to take a look at that Xbox Series S 1 terabyte model. Take a look inside and see if there's anything maybe that Microsoft didn't tell us. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel. We'll start with an unboxing for the new Xbox Series S, which is front and center along with that 1 terabyte listed at the bottom. The back has Starfield shown alongside of Forza, so you can kind of see what their marketing push is, of course, going into the holidays with this new system. I do like the matte black look over the standard white Series S, although I do prefer just matte black systems in general. I feel like they blend in a bit better to the entertainment center, which obviously then leaves your focus up to what you should be looking at, which would be the game on screen. Going through the system box, nothing too crazy here. We have an HDMI and power cable, as well as a matching black controller. I do still think that Microsoft does a really good job packaging and sending their systems out this way, where it's kind of hugged between different pieces of cardboard when you close it, and you still have sort of this styrofoam cover to unwrap. So the system is protected very, very well throughout shipping and then coming home to your house. I went ahead and plugged up the system to check it out, and while the box does advertise 1 terabyte, it's very important to note that the system takes a portion of that, leaving you with an official capacity of 802 gigabytes. But this actually ends up being more than twice the 364 gigabytes that are available on the white Series S. So keep that in mind. We see this with all these different systems. You get an advertised amount, and then you get home and you see what the actual amount is when you start going through the settings. Having the extra space is welcomed, however, especially with the size of games being normal at like 100 gigabytes. Here's Starfield downloading. Yeah, north of 100 gigabytes, and then you think back to that 364 gigabytes, a third of your system storage is gone from one game. So yes, the jump up to 1 terabyte does make it feel more roomy, I guess you could say, on the system to download more games onto a console that does not have a disk drive and completely relies on digital purchases. By the way, I did fire up Starfield, and while I prefer playing on my Xbox Series X, the S, it still provides a pretty good experience for those looking to get into the generation on a budget. Just keep in mind, this system is getting closer to that $400 mark with the PS5 Digital Edition, so Microsoft might be getting to the boundary of what budget would be with these consoles at the $350 mark, just when you compare it to the market as a whole. On to the teardown that I'm expecting to be pretty straightforward. Already did a Series S teardown when it released. 2 Torx screws on the back allow the lid to slide off, which reveals several other Torx screws. You're going to see a pattern here. Even though the system is pretty small, there are a lot of screws holding it together. Anyway, once all of those come out, we can remove the metal lid, and we see our power supply and fan. You do also get a glimpse at a fun Easter egg with the Master Chief helmet on that power supply. I still think the Xbox Series S is an impressive system when it comes to the engineering that went into fitting into this small of a box without sacrificing on cooling, which you can see the cooling would be this large fan on top of a heatsink, and they even demonstrate airflow on that power supply to get an idea as to how you should be kind of positioning your system. I still think if you have your Series S sort of flat on its side, it would be the best way to go about it, but standing vertically, as they have kind of the rubber mounts on the bottom, does still provide enough space for air to flow freely through it. Around the perimeter, there are screws holding down things like the wireless card and power button board, which after all of those are out, we can start removing the motherboard itself. But I did want to take the fan out. It basically pops off at this point, and you can see how large it is up close. This does allow the system to be quieter since the fan won't have to spin as fast to move air off and through the system and the heatsink. Speaking of which is right underneath the fan. Microsoft stuck with this design after seeing it work well in the Xbox 360 Slim and Xbox One. To have a nice heatsink, slap a big fan on top of it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it would be the saying. And it's worked well for Microsoft leading back to 2010, 2011. The storage on board is 1 terabyte, and that comes in the form of a removable NVMe, which has the model number CHSN560. The white Series S that I did a teardown on had the SN530 installed, and I have seen this 560 float around in other Xbox systems before this particular one. Basically, Microsoft has a few manufacturers that they can pull from when putting these systems together, and I happen to get the 560. With the 1 terabyte, however, this would have been used in the Series X up until this system released. I've seen some mention that the 560, it's an upgraded version of the 530. However, when looking around, there is little information on it, and is most likely being kept specifically for Microsoft to use in these Xbox systems. However, if you are familiar with the Western Digital lineup, let me know in the comments what the relationship would be between the 530 and the 560. Popping off the X-clamp and then cleaning the main chip, we can take a look around the board a bit. The cross-generation, by the way, will never end. Since your Xbox has a little piece of the Xbox One installed with the South Bridge, it says Xbox One right on top. This is something I'm surprised Microsoft hasn't changed up yet, but maybe they have a bunch of these South Bridges laying around to pull from. It's really been there since launch. It's mostly responsible for things like I/O anyway. The heavy lifting comes from the main chipset that has the Project Scarlet designation. It's still just the same as the white Series S from launch, whether it's kind of the placement of the memory with multiple chips around the main chipset. And then on the bottom, we have one kind of hanging out on its own, which we do know that the Series S splits up its RAM into 2 different pools, 8 gigabytes and then 2 gigabytes. I still think the hardware from Microsoft this generation has been really good from a quality side, with the Series X and Series S having above average build quality. I do wonder if the $350 price tag is getting a bit too high for a system that is being marketed as the budget alternative. However, it is still $150 cheaper than the Series X if you are just looking to the Xbox family of systems. And based on what we saw with the 512 gigabyte Series S, I wouldn't be surprised if we had sales down the road getting this system to sub $300 levels. And while there wasn't anything too drastically different, kind of as expected, it was nice to sort of go back over the Series S about 3 years since I originally did when it launched, and it was also interesting to see the new storage, I guess, inside of this with that SN560 1 terabyte NVMe drive. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. I'm curious if you're looking into this model despite it getting closer and closer to that Series X or even PS5 digital in price, that coming in now at $350 for the matte black Xbox Series S 1 terabyte. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.